Are birthmarks really related to our past life experiences? Have we actually had something known as a past life? Although there has been substantial debate on this subject, Buzzle gives you some scientific studies and astonishing real-life instances that will compel you to believe that these marks perhaps are the maps to our previous lives. A rebirth identified by a birthmark in Thailand. An old lady wanted to be reborn as a boy, and so her daughter marked her nape with a white paste, as an identification symbol after rebirth. Soon after her death, her daughter gave birth to a boy with a birthmark that seemed identical to the mark she made on her mother. As the boy became older, he also claimed to be the owner of things that were once his grandmother's. Dr. Jim B. Tucker and Dr. Jürgen Kehl, Journal of Psychology and Human Sexuality. The thought of something as genetic and scientific such as a birthmark, to be associated with a phenomenon that is considered to be somewhat paranormal, is intriguing in itself. The aforementioned case is one of more than 2,500 cases that have been studied by Dr. Jim B. Tucker, who is a professor of psychiatry and neurobehavioral sciences at the University of Virginia and is continuing the research initiated by the late Dr. Ian Stevenson on past lives, rebirths, and reincarnations. There have been overwhelming reports of children who claim to remember their past lives and also how they died. According to the research, these children start sharing their previous lives' memories when they start talking, at the age of 2 or 3. Also, a majority of these cases of rebirths, 70%, claim to have suffered an unnatural and violent death at a young age during their previous life, the median age being 28. Dr. Jim B. Tucker's research has also come to conclude that the presence of unusual birthmarks on a child's body can also prove to be a link to their life in the past. Approximately 20% of the rebirth cases recorded consisted of birthmarks or defects that were identical to the wounds on the body of their previous life's human form. Does that conclude that each and every birthmark means something? Past life experiences and birthmarks, what's the link? The occurrence of birthmarks in humans is quite common. The blackish-brownish moles that may be flat or raised, with or without hair. Marks that look like burns, of shapes that are as odd or familiar as possible. Marks that are known but uncommon, and some that have a genetic or scientific explanation for their emergence. However, in case of past lives, birthmarks that are particularly unusual in nature are likely to be taken into account. For instance, if your birthmark looks like a burn mark, or gives more of a scar-like appearance, or perhaps a wound-like look, then maybe it is not just genetics, it is a mark on your very soul. Birthmarks are often found through regressive hypnosis to be a type of emotional or psychic imprint from a cause of death or trauma in a previous lifetime. It is like an emotional wound or memory that was so strong, it carried through to this lifetime as a sort physically imprint at the site of the cause of death. Deborah Lindemann, CHT. There have been many real-life scenarios where the presence of unusual birthmarks have intrigued many of its bearers. While in some cases the owners of such birthmarks were successful in remembering their past life, in other cases, the help of a professional regressive hypnosis leads these people to recollect the secrets and mysteries of the past and understand the significance of a certain mark on their bodies. Interestingly, it has also been claimed that in some cases, these marks tend to disappear on their own once the person has remembered their earlier existence, as if they were just there to remind one of his or her past life. The following are a few examples of the supposed association with certain kinds of birthmarks with a person's previous birth experience. It is said that the darker the mark is, the more recent is the trauma. The lighter it is, the more it is healed in terms of the karma. However, there are still certain lessons that the bearer needs to learn from this traumatic mark. A rare birthmark known as the dysplastic nevy, atypical moles, is believed to bear a resemblance with the wound caused by a poisoned arrow. If you observe the mark carefully, it consists of a substantial-sized central mole with a pigmented ring surrounding it. Chances are that the bearer was killed by this ancient method in his or her past life. Those with a port wine stain are believed to have died due to fire outbreak in their previous life. This may also be applicable to those who have brownish marks that somehow resemble burn marks. In addition, there are many people who are also scared of fire. Certain fears or phobias in a person without any logical explanation are also linked with past life experiences. Nevus sebaceous is another birth defect that seems like a patch on the scalp of the bearer. If viewed in reference to its emphasis on reincarnation, the shape of this mark appears as though a patch of hair has been violently pulled from the scalp. Perhaps this mark is a traumatic result of such an encounter in the past life. According to the website Heal Past Lives, other kinds of marks in a person's body, such as skin depressions, tumors, moles, and warts that are present since birth, are indicative of a disease or trauma of the past life or lives. In a way, they are there to remind the person of the unhealed wounds that the soul bears, and instigate the person to work towards healing those karmic wounds. Ian Stevenson, MD, who spent a great amount of time researching on this area, compiled his findings in his work titled Reincarnation and Biology, a contribution to the etiology of birthmarks and birth defects. As an example, he states that those who die from an injury inflicted by a knife or bullet in their previous life bear a birthmark at exactly the same location. Often, the birthmark looks like a wound from stabbing or being shot by a bullet. It would be interesting for you to know that in certain tribes who believe in rebirths and past lives, it is customary for the family members of a deceased person to mark his or her body with a special substance, most often soot, to be able to recognize the person in his or her next life. It is usually assumed that the person would be born in the same family. This practice is usually seen in certain Asian cultures. According to a research article titled Experimental Birthmarks, New Cases of an Asian Practice by Dr. Jim B. Tucker and H. Jürgen Kiel, a field study was undertaken in Thailand and Myanmar, Burma, to examine such cases. 18 cases were found in which a baby was born with a birthmark that corresponded to a marking mat on the body of a deceased person. In 6 of these, the child also made statements that the family believed were related to the life of the deceased individual. The study done by Dr. Stevenson, which is continued by Dr. Tucker after his death, has compelled even scientists and those with logical thinking to agree that it is illogical to avoid the findings done through their research, and that there is a high probability that life and death is perhaps an unending circle, and we tend to continue our karmic journey from one era to the other in the form of different avatars, experiencing our karmic exploration through living many lives. To conclude, we would just leave it at this note that not all birthmarks may mean a connection with a previous life. However, if yours is something unusual, and if you have additional reasons to support your belief of it being associated with a rebirth, phobias, memories, inherent talents, and the likes, then, if need be, you can unravel the mystery behind these cumulative past life signs through regressive therapy. However, experts also warn that sometimes, peeking into the past may make you more uncomfortable than you are at present. So, evaluate the need and decide accordingly.